Welcome to the Marketing Revolution podcast. This is the underground movement of savage marketers from all over the world. We are not Fortune 500 companies. We are real entrepreneurs with real businesses that have one major thing in mind: to set goals and devour them daily. Because we understand everyone wants to eat, but only savage marketers are willing to do the hunt. Now let's get this revolution started. Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here with the Marketing Revolution podcast and the Marketing Savage Facebook group, coming to you with my boy Trevor from the Real Business Owner podcast.
You know it, buddy.
You're about to bring you another dope ass Marketing Savage interview here, and this one's super special. Many of you guys have already listened to it, but we had Kale on a few weeks ago. And now you guys know, because when me and Kale talked about this, I said I wanted to split Kale and Trevor up on this one because, you know, they're together on a lot of interviews. They're together on a lot of podcasts. And I thought it'd be cool to get each one of them individually on a podcast, on my podcast, and just kind of break it down and talk, man, shoot the shit. And so today we got Trevor on here. So, Trevor, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your business. Let's give us some a little bit of background for any of the audience who might not know you, and we'll get the party rolling.
So I'll just unpack some things real quick, just so that people have a little bit more of a background of, how I grew up and, some of the things that I've gone through in my life, because I think too many people utilize negative situations in their life as an excuse to not pursue something that is of greatness, right? And so I grew up really poor, right? Powdered milk type lifestyle, lights getting shut off, watching my mom cry to the utility department, begging the utility department to turn the lights back on. She's got 7 kids. I'll pay you $50 on Friday, that type of situation. So at a young age, I knew money was very, very important, and I knew we didn't have a lot of it. And I knew that this was not going to be the environment that I wanted to live in when I grew up. I realized that at a very young age, watching the struggle kind of go down, right? Did terrible in school, didn't have a whole lot of structure at home, right? Just my mom trying to raise 7 kids. She's busy trying to make money, and we're just kind of creating our own structure at home, right? And the structure was, if I wanted the TV, we're going to fight over it. Yeah, we're going to fight over that remote, right? You had to fight for what you wanted. Growing up poor, right? And so, but without a lot of structure, I wasn't forced to do like homework or, I could ditch school. Yeah, they can call my mom, but she can't really do much about it. She's got so many other problems or issues that she's dealing with. It's tough to kind of regulate 7 kids as you're trying to keep the lights on and put food on the table. So with that said, I didn't take school very serious, right? Roughly at about 13, I was running around with the neighborhood kids. And if you grow up in a rough neighborhood, the neighborhood kids aren't the best of kids that you should be running with. And so, started smoking weed and drinking and things like that at 13 years old. And that's when things kind of started veering off in a different direction. I stopped playing sports, just started running with the crowd, so to speak, ditching school all the time, didn't graduate school on time. Was a super senior, so to speak, right? Where I had to do some packets to get credits, almost like homework, right? You fill them out, turn them in, and you get your credits. And so 6 months after my whole class graduated, I finally got my diploma. Shortly thereafter, I was landscaping. One of my good buddies was working a sales job. I went to go hang out with him when I was 19, shooting pool at his house or whatever. And they started talking about making $1,500 to $2,000 a week. And here I am, a landscaper, making like $8 an hour, right? Because it was back in the day, I think minimum wage was like $7 back then or whatever it was. So I couldn't wrap my head around the concept of somebody being able to make, $1,500 to $2,000 in a week when I'm making like $300 to $350 a week, busting my ass, waking up at 4 a.m., digging trenches, laying sod, all that type of stuff. And I was just like, no, there's no way. Like, it was almost like they were selling me something that was too good to be true. I just didn't believe it. And finally, by the end of that night, I committed that I would at least try it, because the thought process I went through was, Well, I can always go back to landscaping. Every landscape company needs some sort of grunt worker to dig ditches and, carry sod or whatever, right? And it's not like I'm walking away from a large income. I can easily go find another job at 8, $9 an hour or whatever it is. So I gave that a shot. Started doing pretty well for myself. I think the first year that I was in sales, I made like 40 grand, which is a lot different than like 15 grand that I was making landscaping, right? And so I thought I was a baller. At 19, making roughly $3,000 a month. But it got to the point where some of the older guys that I was working around, um, they were drug users. Okay. So they were making thousands of dollars a week. And when you're young and again, you have no discipline or no structure, you make your money, you go party on the weekends, you go blow it all so that you can remake it again the following week. Right. And it got to a point one day where somebody says, do you want to get in the phone zone? And I said, well, yeah. And they said, take this. Okay. It was an Oxycontin. And I said, what's that? And they said, it's kind of like a lower tab. Right. And I had taken a lower tab here or there in high school, just, messing around with just different stuff that was presented to me. So I didn't think that big of a deal to take something like that because I've done it before and I wasn't addicted to it or anything like that. And so I started taking it and started making some good money because it did put me in the zone. Right. And then 3 months later, I realized that I had ran out of money and I was a full blown addict. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was 20 years old, I was a heroin addict because it went from pills. They were far more expensive. Then people said, hey, why don't you try this? It's a lot cheaper. So you can get a little bit more bang for your buck, so to speak. And I said, no way, I'm not a crackhead. I'm not going to do that. And that only lasted for a month or two before I really started hurting and said, I'll do whatever. Right. And so I ended up being a heroin addict from the time I was, 20 to 24 years old, and then got clean, went up into the mountains and detoxed to where I didn't have cell phone service. I couldn't walk off the mountain, basically removing myself from any ability to make a decision that didn't serve me. Right. And so I forced myself into that situation, got clean, and then I went back into sales, started making good money again. A few years later, me and Kel reconnected, and then we started businesses together. And so here we are now. We own Easier Accounting, we own 60-day credit repair. We're investors in 7 different businesses. We have an Everbowl franchise. We are an investor into the Everbowl parent company, things like that. So at this point, over the last 10 to 11 years or so, I've been able to build a pretty good life for myself. But yeah, it's a decade's worth of work. So I don't want to misconstrue anything that people say, okay, well, he went from that to that just like that. That's not how it works. Right. So it does take a long, long time for things to start happening for you. And I think that's one of the issues in the entrepreneurship space is people see the flashy things and that they want to chase that. And then if they don't have that within a year or two, they feel like that they're doing something wrong. It really takes at least 3 to 5 years for a business to show what its true worth is, what it can really do for you and your family. And I just don't think enough people understand that concept and go into it with a proper expectation, right? And so when they're getting punched in the face, they're asking if it's going to be worth it, but it's only year 1 or year 2. Yeah, it's going to be worth it, but you got to take your licks so that you can become an individual of value and be valuable enough to bring value to other people to where your income then increases, right? And so it's definitely a process, and people need to understand that and be okay with the fact that it's going to take some time in order to get the result that you want. And then it just keeps compounding. You start making more and more money. You take that money, you reinvest it. I think one of the biggest issues in entrepreneurship outside of the startup phase is when they start hitting 100 grand a year or 200 grand a year, and they start feeling a little sense of comfort, like they've made it. And then they, at that point, basically stay there for the rest of their life, and they're on maintenance mode rather than growth mode, right? I think 6 figures is the perfect opportunity to set you up for 7 figures, provided you play your cards right, And we've been blessed enough to be able to play our cards right to where now we make 7 figures on an annual basis individually, right? Our businesses are doing, 8 figures. So, but we make 7 figures now, and we have the money to continue to invest into new opportunities. And that's really where it starts getting fun, because when you're making 6 figures, you're not living the 6-figure life. You're still living the regular life, saving enough money to create more opportunities for yourself. So discipline happens when you're going through the tough times and you continue to pursue that business. That's all fine and dandy. Real discipline kicks in when you're starting to make money and you still have the discipline not to spend it, and you don't get seduced by success, right? You feel like you got a couple extra bucks in your pocket because you sacrificed for 3 to 5 years. You're like, finally, I can reward myself now. When the real reward is peeling back and staying at that level for an extra 2 or 3 years, stacking cash that creates more opportunities down the road so that you can have this compound effect. So in 10 years, you can have 2, 3, 4 different businesses, have investments in other businesses, and still be making good money. And that's where it gets fun. And that's really where we're at right now.
Yeah. It's interesting, some of the stuff that you just went over there is what we talk a lot about this on this podcast. It's like whenever you're building a business, it's more about who you become on that journey than what you receive today, right? Because what you said there, yes, it does take 10 years, but once you become an individual who has built a business within 10 years and you've done it right, you did all these things that Trevor's talking about here, you literally can then build another business overnight because it's the person that you had became on that journey. And that's what it's about. It's about forging this stuff into your character, these habits, the way you think, your energy, your financial thermostat, increasing these things, the expectancy, the abundance attitude. The things that connect you with other people of abundance that can give you that increase, because not only do they hear it from you, but they feel it from your presence. And that's
it's funny. You see a lot of business owners, they end up having 2 or 3 different businesses. Why is that? Is it because they enjoy getting punched in the mouth? Some people like the taste of their own blood. It is what it is, and they're a little weird in the head. But at the end of the day, they've learned all the lessons. They have all the contacts, right? And so it's 10 times easier to build a second business than it is the first business. The first business is that self-improvement journey that you've been looking for. When you're looking for purpose in life and you don't feel like you have any, and you're building a business, you're going to learn so much about yourself, and you're going to become so self-aware that at the end of the day, you're just going to be a better human for building the business and better off financially. So it rewards you in multiple aspects of life.
Trevor, so I've got a friend who about 4 years ago, and I'm just going to tell you, I do not recommend doing this for any of the audience out there, right? But he wound up being worth, I think, like $27 million. And his fitness was out of whack. His drive wasn't there anymore. He was really miserable at that time. And this crazy fucker decides he's going to give away all of his money. So he's a real estate dude, right? Gives away all of his money to charity where he cannot touch, like it's gone. Gives away every dime that he has. And so this was 4 years ago. He's worth $8 million right now. You know why? Because he can give away all the money, and he's way happier. Yeah, he's in shape. He's out there doing 75 hard and stuff like that, right? So he's way happier, and he's happy with the decision that he made.
I would call that being self-aware. I think that he didn't find happiness in the financial aspect of it, and he realized happiness was more so in the process than the end result.
In the hunt,
he wanted to go through the process again because it gives him a lot more purpose in life. He wakes up every day with something that he has to get done or accomplish so that he can move the needle, so to speak, right?
Isn't it funny though, Trevor? Like guys like me and you, right? So you think about it. At one point, we hated the hunt, right? Because we thought there was something better on the other side of the rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
We thought there was something better on the other side of the rainbow. But now, when we're on the other side of the rainbow, what do we try to do every day? get back into the hunt.
Yeah. Like
that's the game now, you
I
know?
mean, you can go to the store and buy meat, but it's not going to probably be as fun as if you went out in the hills and killed your own shit, right? Like
Yeah.
it's more of the process. And my guess is you would actually appreciate the meat a lot more if you had to make the sacrifice for it, right? And so that's kind of the difference. Maybe he did hunt and he did stock up a bunch of meat, but he got a little too fat and happy, and he wasn't out in the hills going through the process anymore, which is really the fun side of things, right? And people just don't understand that because they haven't seen the other side of it yet, right? It all becomes a lot more clear when you really start making money, because a lot of people get stuck in, if I make 100 grand a year, I'll be happy, or 200 grand or 300. The funny thing is, you'll hit the 100 grand and you're going to look around and say, where's the money? And then you're going to hit and you're going to readjust. I need to make 200 and then I'll be happy. Then you'll hit 200 and then you're going to keep adjusting it, right? Happiness doesn't fall on a number, right? Happiness is really enjoying the process that you're going through when you're going through it, even the bad times. Because I'm a firm believer, cashing $100,000 check doesn't teach you anything. It's when you're at a low place is where you really dive internally and ask yourself all the right questions so that you can bring about change, right? And so I think people miss that opportunity a lot, and they're just trying to weather the storm, so to speak, when they're in a very low place, rather than actually learn something when they're in a low place. And if every single time that they realize that they're veering down a path that's really not serving them, they can identify it a lot quicker and say, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What do I need to know to insulate myself from this incident so that it never happens again? Because there was a decision, something that you did that created the situation that you're in, and it's up to you to ask the right questions so that it never happens again, right?
Yeah. And I think people need to understand that when Trevor says ask the right questions, you got to realize that your brain is answering questions all day long. No matter what question. Now, if you ask a question like bad questions, like open-ended questions,
why
like
is this
why me?
happening to
Why
me?
is this happening to me?
Yeah. Instead
Right?
of what is this trying to teach me?
Teach me. What?
Yes.
Yeah. What is this trying to teach me? And you got to get in the habit of asking yourself empowering questions all day long that lead you to where you want to go, because your brain's going to answer questions, whether you ask.
I have a perfect story that'll match up with that example that you gave. So when we initially started our Instagram account, we started it under Easier Accounting. Okay. It took me about a year or so to kind of get it figured out. I was wasting money, is what some people would call it. I would say that was my tuition to learn the information that I needed in order to scale a business, right? So I spent about $30,000 figuring out how to make Instagram work for me in terms of what we were trying to accomplish. That was my Instagram tuition, so to speak, so that I could gain the information that I now know, so that I have the ability to scale a social media account, right? And so what happened after about a year spending 30 grand trying to grow this, we had about 9,800 followers. I log in one day and it says the account no longer exists. It was gone. And Instagram wouldn't communicate with us. They don't have a phone number to get, you can send them a message on a chat, right? And that's about as good as you're going to get. And they kept saying, see guidelines, refer to the guidelines. And the guidelines is a huge, long thing. So I can't tell what guideline I broke. All we were doing is giving motivational content, accounting content, trying to serve the entrepreneur. But yet there's these girls out here where their nipples are hanging out, and those are fine. But for whatever reason, our page got taken down, right? And so I couldn't figure it out really. We were doing giveaways, and I guess on giveaways at the bottom, you're supposed to put a disclaimer that Instagram's not responsible for the giveaway. That's the only thing that I can really pinpoint it to. But I was at a low point for a second because I just spent a year, 30 grand. We started to get some traction on that account, and I was really ready to go ahead and blow it up. It got taken from us. And so I remembered a story of The Rock. He was talking about, he was on a balcony somewhere saying that when he got cut from the NFL or whatever, and then got cut from the CFL, whatever, he wasn't playing football, but that was his dream. And it was like the worst time in his life. And it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to him, because now he is who he is today. It led him down a new path. So basically what he was saying is when something bad is happening, understand that it's probably trying to just steer you in a different direction. And so I remember listening to that clip when this was happening. And so I sat back and I said, what direction am I supposed to go in now? Where am I supposed to take this? Do we just set up another Easier Accounting Instagram account, like with easier underscore accounting or whatever, right? And then just try to set it up and start back over. And I didn't want to rush the process. So I gave myself about 2 weeks of free thought. If all I did was focus on the actual issue the entire time and was angry about the issue, I'm not opening myself up to solutions. You see what I'm saying? So if my focus is on the problem, I'm not being a conduit and being open for a solution to come in. So I wanted to step back from the issue and really just kind of be at peace with it and try to listen to my intuition and try to figure out, what is this trying to tell me? Where is this pushing me? What direction should we move in? And then it hit me. Real business owners. I said, I wouldn't even want to follow an accounting page and I own an accounting firm. It doesn't seem fun. It doesn't seem sexy and it doesn't seem cool, right? And that's really what social media is. If it's fun, cool, or sexy, those are the pages that ultimately grow. And so I was like, how can I create like a camouflage account where we're still promoting our businesses, but it doesn't look like it is?
Sure.
And so I came up with a list of names like owners and operators, because we're owners and operators. And I wanted to attract people that were owners and operators of businesses to the page. Why? Because we own an accounting firm. Those are the decision makers. Then I came up with the name Real Business Owners. Why? Because we're real business owners, and that's who I want to attract to my page. So I wanted to name the page after what we were trying to attract. And I pitched Kel on the idea. Kel, I went through a list of like 4 names. Owners and operators and real business owners are the only ones I remember off the top of my head. But right when he heard real business owners, he says, that's the one. He's like, is that name available? I said, I already checked it all out prior to presenting it to you. All these names that I just presented to you are available. He says, save that one. That's it. Within roughly 2 months of setting up Real Business Owners, we had already met and exceeded 10,000 followers. And now we're pushing roughly 100,000 followers. I think we just broke 98,000 just this morning, right? And this is about 2 years in. Okay. Real Business Owners, that name is far more sexy than Easier Accounting, right? And that's my camouflage approach, right? When they hit the page, they don't know what my intent is, the individual operating the page. They just see good content for entrepreneurs or business owners, and they want to follow it. Then I'll sprinkle in here and there on the podcast that we own Easier Accounting. So if they know us, like us, and trust us, based upon the information that we're giving them on the podcast, by default, we're now top of mind when they need a new accountant, or when they're ready for tax returns to be done, or they need a new payroll person. And so at one point we were spending $15,000 a month in marketing for Easier Accounting. I now spend $0 a month in marketing for Easier Accounting, and we onboard just as many clients as we ever have, if not more. So that is an example of turning a negative situation, asking yourself the right questions while you're in that situation, and freeing your mind up to create the solution to the problem, to where you're getting the answer. You're getting the reason why that bad thing happened, to where you can be redirected to the true and real path that you should ultimately be on.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's incredible. And what you said there is super powerful, and people need to understand that, because we have different marketing angles like that inside of all of our businesses, all the way down to the guy that is an automotive professional and happens to like cigars. Yep. I mean, you could literally create a local cigar page, drawing in your ideal clients, because people who smoke cigars have nice cars, they spend money. And I went over this in my group quite often. Whether if you look at Nancy Meek, I give her as an example, who does loans to I think businesses, and she operates a wine page. Mm-hmm. And has these wine meetups. Well, I'm not talking about the type of wine me and you used to drink, Trevor, like that fucking Mad Dog 2020, fucking Boone's Farm. I'm talking about like the shit rich people drink, right?
Oh yeah.
So they come along. She has these wine get-togethers, and then they get to know her, right? So what do you do? What do you do? It's better if they ask what you do. And, or you just drop, or you just talk about it, or you framework it in a story.
Yep.
Just like Trevor just did there. I mean, he frameworked what he did in a story. It's impossible for me to not know that you own Easier Accounting just by telling that example, by telling that story. And that's a story. That's a parable. People are never going to forget that shit.
Exactly. So I just brought value to people that are listening, but at the same time brought value to myself in a more of a subconscious or camouflaged way, right?
I talk about that. That's when you're good at marketing, when your commercial, okay, because I always talk about this, almost like your timeline on Facebook or your Instagram and all that. It's like a TV show. So you got to give people like 80% content and then like 20% commercials, okay? Because nobody will fucking stick around for 100% commercials. That's the biggest mistake people make. I'm just gonna fucking spam my thing over and over again. No. Bring value 80% of the time. It's almost like a TV show, bring value 80% of the time and then slip in some commercial. But when you're good, when you get good, they don't even know you fucking have a commercial in there, right? It just becomes part of the mix.
Exactly.
And that's master level fucking ninja marketing savage shit right there, bro.
Well, I got a little savage in me. I ain't no highly savage, but
you got a lot of savage in you, bro.
no,
So
that's exactly right. I mean, I think even like on email marketing campaigns, you're supposed to like give, then ask, right? So there's that ratio that you're talking about, whether it's 80-20 or whatever it is, right? But make sure that you're constantly trying to give value. The issue that I see on social media, people are like, they'll post like 5-star reviews. How does that serve me seeing that you got a 5-star review? Now, I get it. You're trying to show people that you do good business, and it's okay to sprinkle that in here and there. But if twice a week you're posting like 5-star reviews or before and after pics or whatever it is of this and that, it's you're really just saying, hey, look at how great I am. How does that bring value to somebody that's seeing that? The idea is showing them value, creating enough value to where you're just top of mind in whatever industry you're in when they need that type of service, right? That's really what it comes down to. And so we've done a pretty good job of that up to this point. And we continue to see more and more people reach out to us for accounting. So
that's awesome,
man. Yeah.
And I highly recommend these guys. I mean, so if you guys are looking for accounting services, there's like no better dudes in planet Earth. I mean, y'all run a tight ship. It's fucking like two of the best guys I know, man. I love spending time. I hate that sometimes they don't come out to our meetings. So I'm always looking around for y'all. But
yeah, likewise, dude. You're definitely
good shit.
There's a handful of people that we look forward to seeing, and you're definitely one of those individuals. You and your wife are just amazing people, and we're lucky to have you guys just in our network and somebody that we're able to call friends. So
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you talked about earlier was, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we go through like these dark times, and are we about up, Trevor?
No, you're good.
Are we good? Okay.
Yeah.
So, as entrepreneurs, we go through, that's right. We started at 12:30. Shit. I thought we were already an hour into it. So, as entrepreneurs, we go through some dark times, occasionally, and people got to realize that's part of it. I'm this fucking like weird type now where I actually welcome this shit because I like to learn during what I like to call is leaning into the darkness. And I think a lot of people don't realize exactly what that is. But what I'm here to tell you is, just like Trevor was just talking about, empowering questions, like how we got to ask ourselves questions. These are the type of empowering moments when you're in the darkness that you got to really ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Because I truly believe that we're going to be on or off. Like, there's the higher, like if you have super high entrepreneur highs, you're going to come down. You're going to have super fucking lows. I mean, that's
just
the way the world works.
As high as the high is, that's how low the low can go.
That's what it is.
It's an amazing roller coaster ride. But because of the highs and how many lows you'll experience in entrepreneurship, like I said, you're not going to learn anything at the high point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
you learn at the low point because entrepreneurship has such highs and lows. That's why it's such a wonderful self-improvement journey, because you'll be hitting lows throughout that whole process. And that's where the soul searching happens. And that's where you grow as an individual. Right.
Yep.
So,
and also what you got to understand is when you hit them lows, I call that the entrepreneur dip. Everybody I know that has any level of success experiences a dip right before it goes to the next level. And it's almost a test. So that dip could happen to you, and you could decide to shrink back. You could decide to avoid whatever it is that is about ready to come into your life, or you can decide to ask these empowering questions, learn these things when you're in the darkness, learn how to fucking push harder when it's even harder for you to do so, because that's going to put you ahead of 99.9% of the population, just knowing that you push hard when it gets hard on you.
Well, for me, I reframe it that this is an opportunity to create more discipline, right? It's easy to show up when you feel like it, when everything's going well. Discipline is created when you don't feel like doing something and you still follow through with it. So that's why successful entrepreneurs are very disciplined, because they continued to go through the shit and showed up every single day, even though they didn't feel like doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so their level of discipline is head and shoulders above the average person, because the average person doesn't feel good. They buy the excuse that their brain sells them. Man, you don't feel good today. Just stay in bed. You could use the sleep. Yeah, you know what? I could, and then they listen to that bitch voice that's trying to talk them out of doing something that they know that they should be doing, right? But anytime that I hit a low point, I tell myself, these are the moments that actually make you. It's not when everything's going good. And when people are hitting a low point, again, if they can reframe the way that they look at a low, there's so much opportunity there that if they reframe it, and they ask themselves the right questions, and they understand that that's where discipline is ultimately created, then it's going to make it a little bit easier to show up, because they know if they show up, even when they don't feel like it, they're now a better individual. Even if they didn't move the needle a whole lot that day, they still created another level of discipline that they didn't have the day prior.
Yeah, dude. I love it. I love it. Well, kind of, I wrote a post recently, and I think, I don't know if you've seen this or not, Trevor, but I got to read this on the podcast, man, because this like kind of falls into right what you're talking about when you hit a low point. It says, if you get caught, I wrote this post, if you get caught masturbating and you stop, then you're just the dude who got caught. But if you keep going, then the guy who caught you becomes fucking gay for watching. Success is all about finding the hidden advantages in a fucking negative situation, man.
There you go.
What that post meant, bro. You know how it is, dude. You fucking
watching. It's on them now, right? So
well, it's a different story when your boy goes to all your friends and says, yeah, I caught fucking old Trev jacking off the other day. But you turn it around and you say, this fucking meat gazer walks in as I'm fucking jerking off and he can't stop looking at my dick, you faggot.
Yeah, why'd you look? Why'd you look?
Why'd you look?
Come on, bro. You're the one staring at it, not me.
Yeah.
I've seen it a million times. So
what are you looking at? Gay?
Yeah, exactly. So true.
No offense to all the gay brothers and sisters that I love out there, because y'all know I love you. Yep. And I really do. I got a lot of friends, and the ones that I kick it with, they would laugh at this shit anyway, so they don't get all hurt about shit like that anyhow, So
it's a fun spin on it,
Yeah. So it's hilarious. There was we were at the Howl at the Moon Saloon with my wife, and it was on her birthday. And she's, we're having a hell of a time, right? And there's this fucking there's this gay dude in there who's like pretty damn good dancer, and he's up there and he's across where we got another couple with us, and he's across. He's kind of like grinding on my buddy, and my buddy's like shrinking away, and he's like real homophobic, and he's like oh god, dude, like get away from me. My wife looks over at me and says, hey, go show this guy a good time. I jump out of my chair. I'm like, get over here. Flipped him around, man. Me and him tore up the dance floor, son. Ain't no shame in my game, bro.
Yeah, exactly. You're there with a lady. Everybody knows. So you're with yourself.
It's so funny. Like, I found out that like the dude was he owned like a big business down there in Cincinnati, and he was just like, dude, you're like the coolest person I ever ran into, And I'm like, yeah, man. It's fucking cool to meet you, man, and met some pretty cool people.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to put yourself out there and get in uncomfortable situations, and that's what happens.
Well,
Something
yeah,
cool comes out of it, right?
And my wife knows that I'm the king of getting into uncomfortable situations like that and not giving a fuck.
Yep.
You know, I don't give a fuck what anybody fucking thinks. You know what I mean? I'm gonna live life.
That's why
Fuck
you're the
everybody.
savage, bro. That's why you're the savage. You know? That's why you're
It's
good at
almost
what
like
you do.
what's somebody gonna do? Call me fucking gay? I'll be like laughing at them. You know what I mean? It's like calling a bodybuilder fat. Like they don't give a shit. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, oh, you know, if I walked up to my bodybuilder who's training me,
Well,
you
they
know,
don't care about that individual's opinion, right? That individual's opinion doesn't matter to that individual because they're already self-aware enough, right?
yeah. But and then that's a thing that people got to realize. If there's something somebody says to you and it actually bothers you, then there's a fucking tiny bit of truth to it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if there wasn't, it wouldn't bother you. Like I said, if you walk up to a bodybuilder, I get trained every morning by Blair, who was literally Eddie Bravo, WWE wrestler, Eddie Bravo. So he trains me every day. He's the biggest motherfucker. I mean, he's a fucking big dude. I mean, even Kluko, he was in it before Kluko, and watch Kluko get his pro card, you know? So Kluko knows Blair, and, you know, he trains me every day, shows up. I work with him one-on-one. And if you walk up to Blair and I said, "Hey, fat ass," he just laughs his ass off, man. There's no truth to it. He knows there's no truth to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So ultimately, I honestly want people to let this sink in a little bit. If somebody says something to you and it really bothers you and makes you angry, just remember there may be a shred of truth to it, and that's why. You know,
or you just or you've operated your life so much on validation, right? Seeking, worrying about the opinions of others, right? Even if it's not true, you still thrive on validation. The issue here is what people need to understand is our entire life we've asked for permission.
Yeah.
For everything.
I think we all get stuck. Right? We all get stuck there at some point.
Even as a kid, if we played little league or sports or whatever, we do something good, we look at our coach for reinforcement or validation that we did something good. Then you look for your parents. Did they see that? Are they, and so you're not happy for yourself. You're seeing the reactions of other people, and you're living for their reaction. You're living for their validation. And it's pretty much the way that you go get a good grade and you bring it home and say, look, I passed the test. All you're doing is trying to get validated that you're good or you're great, right? And so the idea is really with children anyways, if they do something great and they are seeking validation from you as a parent, you need to flip it and ask the right questions. How did that make you feel, John? Did that feel good hitting that?
Yeah.
Home run? Probably felt great, didn't it? Good for you.
Yeah.
Have them turn inward and have them understand and ask themselves how it felt, so that all they care about is wanting to feel that again for themselves, not for you or anybody else. But the issue is you're 100% right. If somebody says something, calls you fat, maybe you are. Maybe you need to own that and say, you know what? I am overweight and there's something that I can do about it, because you have full control over that, right? So don't make somebody else's diss a truth by not honoring what you need to do, which is ask yourself the right question and say, is there any truth to this? And if there is, what can I do, or what habits can I form to create a different outcome for my future? Because if it hurts that bad, you're just setting yourself up for failure again at another point for another dickhead to come into your life and say that exact same thing. If anything, that may be a good thing, right? So again, turn a negative into a positive. We can all do it depending on how we ask ourselves those questions, right? And so that's really what it comes down to. Is it's you asking yourself the right questions in all negative scenarios to figure out what you could do to insulate yourself from not having to experience that again, right?
It's like Waslow's hierarchy of, human needs. You look at that, and right before self-actualization, that's a need to be validated. That's social validation. That's when, and I believe that we all get stuck in this at some point. I can remember this fucking terrible. times of being stuck in this fucking thing where like I had to have other people's approval to feel good about myself. And here's the fucked up thing. You'll never, ever, ever get it. Like,
not the way you want it, right?
no,
Not the way you picture
you
it.
will always fucking lack. Like, and I know, like, I've rose clear to fucking the top of industries and people walking up to me and looking at me going, it would be fucking great to be you. Like, people telling me it would be great to be me, right? And I get this shit and I'm going like, you know, at the time I'm like, I don't feel fucking so great. You know what I mean? Like,
That's a great point.
Yeah,
and it feel different at 200 grand a year or $500,000 or $1 million. That's not the case. You're not going to feel different. You're again, it's such slow changes that you don't notice it, right? Maybe if somebody didn't see it for 5 years and then all of a sudden you're a lot different and more successful and they could see the change. It's the difference of somebody losing, let's say 50 pounds. They don't really see it that much, maybe in the mirror. And then they see somebody they haven't seen in a few months. They're like, holy cow, did you lose weight? You look way different. Right. And so at the end of the day, if you're making more money, here's how I put it when you're leveling up. Struggle never goes away. You'll always deal with struggle. So you got to get comfortable with that. And again, that's why we're talking about asking yourselves the right questions, right? And so, because it will serve you and it'll help you get to the next level, the next level, the next level. But just like on a video game, you pass level 1, you go to level 2. It's not going to be as easy on level 2 as it was on level 1. There's going to be a new thing that you're going to have to figure out. And it's the same thing on level 3, level 4. Now, again, as you're going through these levels of life or levels of income in life, there's going to be new challenges. The very end of the game is the biggest challenge of all. Okay? It's this big behemoth that you have to fight and you have to figure out. It doesn't get easier as you climb these levels. If anything, it gets harder. The difference is you have a different level of stress resistance that were built in level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. It's almost like trying to lift, let's say, 135 pounds on bench press. That might be your struggle right now. Mm-hmm. But guess what? When you're continuing to push yourself and now you bench 225 pounds, it's the same struggle. It's just different weight, mm-hmm. right? It feels the same. You're pushing and it feels like it's pushing back. Yes, you're a lot stronger. That doesn't mean the struggle goes away because you're just adding more weight. And as you go through these levels in business, you're adding more weight to your plate. So struggle never goes away. It just changes and it evolves and it gets bigger. It gets bigger. The headaches get bigger. You're just smarter and you're quicker at asking yourself the right questions because you figured all this stuff out in the first 2 to 5 years. So by year 7 or 8, you can streamline some of the problems that you're facing because you know how to deal with them a little bit. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any problems. You're just a little bit more prepared for them because you finally just come to the conclusion of there's always going to be problems no matter what level I'm at, because every level you get to, your business will have these stress fractures. It'll show you an area where your business was actually weak that you thought was strong. Or maybe that area was strong when you operated a $1 million company, but now it's $5 million. You might have to change some of the systems and processes in order to meet that same standard that you used to have at $1 million, but now you're at 5 million. There's always constant changes. There's always problems. There's always struggles. But what can you do to become a little bit more stress resistant? What could you do to put yourself in a situation where it's just another problem? You've got a pocket full of solutions. That's not a big deal. You know, we've dealt with problems before, and in reality, the problem just showed where we were weak, and now we're 10 times stronger because we addressed that and we plugged that hole, right? So issues are usually just showing you where you're weak and giving you an opportunity to become greater. And as long as we think like that and we have that type of mentality, it's going to make going through this entrepreneurship journey just a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's just going to make it a little bit easier, right?
And another question, like we talk about asking ourselves questions in business, one that I want to encourage everybody out there to ask yourself in every area of your business. If you're looking to grow, you should sit down and ask yourself, if I 10x this area of my business, what would break? Like what would catastrophically break? So we're always trying to plan on 10xing any area of our business, whether that's 10x lead flow, whether that's, 10x that I need to hire 10x more people, what would break at that point? What would need to go into place so that way you can actually articulate a plan for growth? And you should always be looking at that 10x in the future, how that looks and what would fucking just completely be destroyed. I mean, even Trevor, the level his business is, it could be 10x, right? I mean, your business is going to be 10x. And when it does, what would fucking catastrophically break? And then you start working on fixing that shit now. Because there's something about the universe that I believe, like God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is waiting for you to expand, but won't do it for you because it may fuck you up. Like, okay, if I expand you too fast right now, it may actually fuck you up.
Maybe you're just not ready to handle what's gonna have to happen in order for you to get to that
it's next almost level. Like saving you.
Exactly.
So you almost got to always be thinking in the future if you want to grow, like, what am I going to put in place if this happens? If tomorrow my fucking leads 10x, how am I going to roll out a plan to absorb that? How is that going to affect and have a domino effect throughout my entire business? And sit down and have a brainstorming session, spend a fucking day on it, drawing on a whiteboard. And you'd be surprised. You articulate that shit on a whiteboard. Now you got yourself a 90-day plan. Now you got yourself a way to 10x your business. It's powerful, man. Powerful shit, but that's asking yourself the right question.
Yep, that's what it all just comes back to, right? And I would challenge anybody that's an entrepreneur, just like you said, take a day, whatever. Every single year, me and my partners, we go somewhere. A couple of years ago, we rented a house in Malibu, up in the hills, right? Last year, we rented a house right on the water in Seattle. Right. And so we spend 2 to 3 days there, just completely removing ourselves from our personal life and our business life so that we could focus on the business rather than working in the business. Right. And so that's our kind of our mastermind type thing that we do every single year so that we have, and this usually happens November, December, to winding down the end of the year where we're trying to plan out kind of the next year, some areas where we're weak. What could we do here to try to stay in front of more people? What could we do in this area in order to grow our business? How can we streamline this system or this process so that it's a better experience for the customer, easier for the employee, things like that. And so it's very difficult to really create solutions when, again, you don't have that free space because there's issues or problems just coming at you already every single day. And so you get into the point of where you're just maintenance mode because you're putting out fires every day and your business isn't scaling. Right. And so we get to that point of, okay, there's a lot of fires. I've got employees operating. My job's just to put out the fires now. Now I make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. I'm just going to put out the fires. You're going to be stuck at that income level for a long time until a competitor maybe comes in and creates a better experience and then puts you out of business. Right. And so if you're not constantly trying to think about the next thing, there's somebody else that is in your industry, and that individual will eventually, again, you'll have to meet that person at one point or another down the road that's doing all the right things. Yeah, they're putting out the fires, but then they spend the time away from their business to say, why are these fires even happening? What can I do in my business to slow the spread or stop the fires, so to speak? There's always solutions that can be created, but we just never put ourselves in a situation where we have the ability to free think and basically create a plan and execute the plan because we're too busy just dealing with problems. So again, if you stay busy dealing with problems, you're always just going to deal with the same ones over and over and over because you're not spending the time that you need to figure out the solution to the problem. Right.
And you ultimately should surround yourself with problem solvers and encourage that troubleshooting and problem solving. You should encourage that inside of your culture, letting people know when they come to you with problems. One of the very first questions that I ask anybody is, what have you done to figure this out?
Mm-hmm.
What have you done? And I'll even get to the point, Chet Holmes, he always talked about having a got a minute board, putting a got a minute board outside of your office because all your employees come in and hey, you got a minute? Hey, you got a minute? And for an entrepreneur, that's death because it takes us 15 minutes to get into the zone. And then once we're in the zone, like if somebody interrupts that, it's going to take us 15 minutes to get back into the zone where we break that resistance and we fall into whatever it is that we're doing. So if you have people coming in with the got a minute questions all the time, you force them to write it on a board, which forces all the other employees to see exactly what they wrote down, which forces you to get out there and huddle them around you and say, hey, have you researched this yet? Okay, get the fuck out of here. Come back whenever you've done everything that you in your power. What, you want me to fucking Google it for you? Like, and it forces people to.
It's crazy. There's a lot of answers on Google, and there's plenty of people that send us direct message with, something, and I'm like, I don't know. I Google it and I copy and paste and put the fucking article right in the DM.
Like that's kind of like, hey, dude, do you want me to do your job for you? Am I your assistant? Am I your secretary? But you build a culture of problem solvers, and I tell everybody I work with, like, I value that more than anything. Like, I value that you can solve problems, and and then I keep an assistant always with me that can solve problems for me at all times. One of the things I know you got to cut out of here in a minute, Trev, so you got another meeting coming up here. But one of the things I want to talk about is, Trevor's talking about going and having these meetings off site. One of the things I want to encourage, and this is something I don't even think I've talked about in the podcast, but I encourage what's called the impossible brainstorming session, meaning you sit there and you take every limitation off the fucking plate and you talk about how you could run your business if, like, all possibilities existed. Now, McDonald's was known for doing this, and they would say things like, well, we would have a rocket launcher where we could rocket launch the food like directly into the car, and we would use like this gravitation system that would like beam it down and put it on, the dashboard for them, right? And we'd be able to collect their money through the fucking, telekinetic whatever system that we built out here. And then but during that session, maybe during that impossible session where you opened your mind to think about things, you come up with some guy comes up and goes, hey, well, how about if we just put an extra lane in the drive-through? We could serve double the amount of people that way. Oh, okay, right? Because you actually take
one that I see now has two in every McDonald's, right?
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they were known to do that, but it kind of breaks you from, you were talking about getting into that creativity, that creative mode. That's something I want to encourage people to do as well, is to take a couple hours with your staff and just say, fuck it. Like, everything's off the plate, right? How would this business run in like a fucking, like a Jetsons world? You know what I mean? Some of you guys who are old enough, you know what the Jetsons are. It's like the family in the future that drives around in spaceships and shit like that, right? Mm-hmm. What would this business look like in that world if we could do anything? And you'd be surprised, like, the real tangible ideas that can actually come out of that.
It could be something dumb, but then you take 10% of that where you take reality and put it in there, and then again try to merge the two, right? And it seems like that's exactly what they did. They took some crazy idea. And it's funny because even when we're coming up with business names or we're coming up with anything in our business, a lot of the ideas are dumb as hell. They're just stupid as shit. And we're just sitting around like, that's dumb. That's dumb. Yeah. That's dumb. And then finally that one hits. Right? So you've got to go through all the dumb ideas to find the good one. It's never usually the first one. So somebody says something dumb, you just roast them like a good friend would do. Tell them they're an idiot and they're not on the right path. The next person, And so that's what we've done. We just get together. If we want to come up with a new business and we need a business name, we start just heading down this direction, and it's just all over the place. And then finally somebody says that one thing, whether it is a business name or a new system or a new process to a problem that we have, right? Whatever your today problem is, you want to make it your yesterday's problem as soon as possible. And the way to do that is by free thinking. Putting yourself in a scenario where you have the ability to create solutions rather than just address that one problem, put out the fire. Because if you don't ever really create the solution, that fire is going to kick back up again, right? You just brought it down to an ember, and that's it. The wind's going to kick up and turn it into a fire again.
That's it, my man. That is it. All right, brother, man. I know me and you could just talk on and on. I was even going to try to get into the shaman thing, but we'll get into that at another time, on another day, man.
Yeah, you never know where the conversation is going to go, and I loved the conversation, and the whole shaman thing and doing an ayahuasca, again, it's just another journey of self, right? So entrepreneurship, we just talked about how it's the greatest self-improvement journey that exists. And you start really, really, really getting hungry for it, like willing to try anything to figure yourself out that much more, to become that much better. And you stop removing things off of your plate that you would not do in order to figure yourself out. So I've opened myself up to, any possibility that's going to make me better. I want to try to pursue that. I want to figure out if I want to have that experience. Right. And so, you are the individual operating your business. The business is not going to create more value than you have the ability to create. So if you're driving the car, so to speak, and you're running the business or you own the business, at the end of the day, as you become more valuable, you have a different perspective on your business than the old you didn't have. And the old you didn't see a solution to that problem, but now a new, more valuable you might be able to create that solution because you have a different perspective, because you've had a new experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big believer that people should try to experience as much as they possibly can so that they can learn about themselves as much as they possibly can, because the more that you know about you, the better off you're going to be, because then when you get in, again, tough situations, you're an individual that's built for it because of some of the previous experiences that you've gone through. So yeah, that's a fun little story, but it was a great experience. I will share that. So,
well, we'll definitely leave them on a cliffhanger then. So that way, I'm gonna get you back on the podcast again, and we'll have to talk a little bit about that. Probably one of my favorite Rogan podcasts was the dude who talked about his whole ayahuasca trip, and business owner, supplement company, and he went from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions because he's seen little tubes and holes where he could view. It was clear the business pursuits that he needed to get away from and the ones that he needed to tunnel and actually move towards.
I think that was Aubrey Marcus, the individual's origin. Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys could go back and want to watch a Joe Rogan podcast, just Google that podcast, Google the ayahuasca podcast. I think there was 2 of them. It's probably one of the most entertaining podcasts that I've ever listened to, and it'll open your mind to understand exactly what we're talking here. But we're gonna save Trev's story here for another time. But other than that, Trevor, man, tell everybody where to find you, and we'll bounce out of here, brother.
Yeah, no. If anybody wants to connect with me, you can connect with me just on Instagram at Real Business Owners. We have our podcast. That's just Real Business Owners on any platform. We've been trying to get John's ass out to Utah for quite some time so that he can hop on it and chop it up with us. I think it's going to happen soon. Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. But that's mainly where my focus is right now, is on Instagram and Real Business Owners, and continuing to try to grow that brand, so that the more eyeballs that we get on Real Business Owners, by default, there's more eyeballs on our business. And we know that it's an attention game. That's what marketing is getting yourself in front of people so that people are aware that you exist, so that they know that they could do business with you. So that's my main focus. We do answer 100% of direct messages on Real Business Owners account on Instagram. They can check us out at Real Business Owners on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. But Instagram's kind of the main platform that we prefer to focus on. So, but man, it's been fun. I appreciate the hell out of you, and I'm excited as shit to see you here within the next week or two at MDM.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait, brother. So anyhow, y'all, man, that's Trevor right there. Check him out, Real Business Owner Podcast. Like, all of his episodes on his podcast are like this. I mean, the dude's incredible. Very articulate, and I love it. You got that thing about you, Trevor. You can explain things in a way that a lot of people cannot, and that's like your superpower. I call that, me and Kale were talking about that being your superpower. And but it's awesome to have you on the Marketing Revolution podcast. And for all you guys who are listening on iTunes, head over to the Marketing Savage Facebook group, because you would have watched this 2 weeks before you listen to this podcast. So anyhow, y'all, I appreciate you. Thanks again, Trevor. See you on the next one.